when I started, you couldn't even get on the internet at all. They downloaded mail from the University of Washington twice a day. That was email.
A great thing about Microsoft back in those days is we did have a lot of autonomy. It wasn't a battleship, it was a fleet of little speedboats. And, a couple people would see that there was a new thing happening and they'd turn their speedboat that way. And then a few more would turn. Then all of a sudden, 500 speedboats were heading that way. And eventually the company would make it a formal plan.
They all knew the internet, but nobody knew that it was about to be this giant tsunami.
We really did believe that computers would transform how people worked and played. Having a computer on every desk and in every home running Microsoft software was a way to see that come to fruition.
There was a lot of turmoil in the company about the primacy of the internet versus the primacy of Windows. And there were debates and squabbles and infighting, and eventually the Windows 95, the personal system team, got blown up.
Brad Silverberg was like, we're building a browser. We were going to do the Microsoft network. All of this became clear in April of 1994.
I just remember Brad Silverberg getting up and talking about the internet. And we had been so heads down on Windows 95.
I think the internet made it even easier for people to be able to use PCs as part of their everyday environment, to be able to discover, learn, be more productive, have more fun.
A bunch of those speedboats all starting to turn. And by mid-95, there were so many people starting to think that way that, it was, okay, we need to actually start to corral all this and figure out what the heck we're doing as a company.
At some point, you have all of these ground-up ideas, a functioning anarchy, and then you have something that pulls it all together, and no matter who you are, where you are in the company, you do it. You do what that memo says.
Bill had written this this well-known memo. It's on the internet. You can find it, and called the Internet Tidal Wave.
The Internet Tidal Wave memo, right, basically galvanized the entire company onto one page, one objective.
Ultimately, the internet showed us that all things are interwoven and that information, and you need to create an organization that thinks of itself first as a whole and then as individual teams. You need those individual teams to speed innovation and speed productivity, but there has to be a level of cooperation and collaboration.
And so it was basically kind of a wake-up call, an intentional wake-up call for everyone in the group. We're going to now be the Internet division. And we did Windows 95. We're now going to be the Internet division. And now everyone needs to go off and think about what we should do.
And Bill ran a process that I learned from Bill in this, and maybe it was then I learned it, I don't know, but this process where he directly program managed that change across all of the different groups. I was in his conference room multiple times a week. He would have meetings constantly on every single detail of how we were doing this shift in the company. And he shifted the entire company's focus to the internet in just a few months' time.
And it was, just this incredible wave. And we knew it even before the Internet Tidal Wave memo, because we were sort of on the forefront of things. And so we started working on all sorts of stuff to make a better browser, to make other products to go with it.
It was hard because we didn't get some of that downtime we thought we were going to have, but it was exciting because it was a great wave of connectivity and cool new things happening that we wanted to be a part of.
We were really worried, legitimately worried, that the browser would become a new platform. No one would build apps for Windows anymore. They would just build internet apps.
We started with like 2 people working on it in early 95, and we licensed a code base. And by the end of 95, I don't know, we had like 700 people working on it. And there were a couple reasons why we were able to shift so many people so fast. Number one, going back to that speedboat analogy, everybody read that memo, everybody saw what was going on, people were motivated to start helping. 2, I think Bill gave out a strong message to the company saying this is really important. and you need to go help on this. And so that was motivating. And then 3 was a gift we got from Mark Andreessen, who came out with this famous quote, and he now denies he said it, but he said it, that they believed that they were going to, render Windows into just being a poorly debugged set of device drivers. Because his view of the world is all the interesting applications are going to be on the internet running through the browser, and the rest of Windows didn't matter. So, you just told, thousands of people here that their job didn't matter, and thousands of smart people that they were, meaningless. And that was very motivating.
We did all this corporate stuff. I talked to Lori Moore in support and Patty Stonecipher about making all of the product support stuff, like email and online and chat. Everybody was doing it instantly. There was no mandate. There was nothing.
Yes, I mean, there was a bit of a land rush in that we knew that the internet went from being mostly a walled garden with AOL and even early efforts at Microsoft to this wide open idea.
The internet as we know it today wouldn't be that way without the PC revolution.
It's sort of like we went from MS-DOS to Windows and from Windows to the internet, as all these key sort of milestones in the history of computing.
It used to be to get a new software experience on your machine, you had to go get an installer and install software, and it was a pain in the butt and it was finicky. And then if you change machines, you need to do it again. And installing and delivering a new software experience was hard, and it was a real impediment to adoption. And now all of a sudden, I just go to a site and boom, there's the experience, and it just made it so much easier to try a bunch of things. I don't think people today understand what a sea change that was for using computers. When we started that effort, we had Mosaic was in the market, Netscape, and we had 0% market share.
Our browser wasn't really that good, the first version. The Netscape Navigator browser was a lot better, and not surprisingly, they gained tons and tons of market share.
Less than a year, we got to like 30% market share by, climbing our way up out of that hole and building a great product. When you look at what we eventually shipped as a browser for Internet Explorer for the Windows platform, we had help from all over the company. The languages team did a great job of doing all the language and scripting support in that. We had the tools team doing debugging. We had the server team doing the back end for it. We had within the Windows team, the kernel team jumped on and did the Java virtual machine. We just had people that came in from everywhere to help make it happen. And it was a really great time to be here. The amount of organic teamwork that happened, it was exciting and empowering, and it felt really good.
We understood technically what to do, and then, IE3 was just good, and it was just better.
So it went beyond the browser, that was an exciting time.
So things were just moving so rapidly that need to be inventors and to ask constantly, how will travel change? Thus, Expedia. How will access to news change? How will political commentary change? The creation of Slate, here, which was a huge change for me personally, as well as for the world of political dialogue. Those kinds of things were just wide open, and we were out looking and talking to creative people around the country and around the world about what kind of information, what kind of products would they see in the future that would empower people, engage people, delight people, based on this idea of a computer on every desk and in every home.
And then on top of that, we had MSN was coming out of the ground. Things like Microsoft Money, and then Expedia and Cars and Sidewalk and all these internet, first generation internet applications, websites, businesses. We had a joint venture with NBC. MSNBC was just starting. We had a cable channel we were part of.
We were seeing this incredible growth, but it was still fragile because people didn't really believe it. The internet made a bunch of people, particularly in the investment community, think that the next thing was the one that was really going to take off. What they didn't see was that the internet needed a reliable, broad-based, technically competent platform to put in your home and on your desk. And so the internet turned out to be the biggest opportunity for Microsoft just to sell PCs so you could get on the internet.
We knew we were making a major impact. We didn't understand the full social implications of that.
I feel like all of us who worked in that era not only laid the foundation for today's Microsoft, but we got to participate in a transformative part of society, of our world, the rise of computing.
So it turns out, if we had all that support for architecture and building products people want, once you pointed it at the enterprise and all the thousands of salespeople and support organizations Steve was building, that's what got the modern Microsoft going. And that literally defines 1997 forward. It's just unbelievable. That defines the Exchange product, SQL Server, Windows Server, Active Directory, the Office suite itself, which launched really on Windows in 1993 with Office 4.x. Like, that's the whole of the company. And that's literally where it is today.